Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Sunrise. It is this lovely Friday morning. I'm Chamberlain. So,
rain clouds are hanging over Abuja this morning, but whatever it looks like in your area, we are daily dose of sunshine. Good morning and welcome. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
And I'm Ayo Makide. It's a Friday morning. I'm surprised Maupe didn't say thank God it's Friday today. Anyway, welcome to the show.
So whatever you get, you can make out time and visit this kind of locations. It has a soothing effect on any and everyone, probably, if you do consider it worthwhile to visit Gurara Waterfalls in Niger State. I mean, we can't talk enough about all of these kind of places in this country. And so it's one of those areas where make out time, if you will, and be here. And so, yeah, I mean, you just saw some part of the tourism potentials in the country. So this, I dare say, is also one of them. I know that the Minister of Tourism spoke about security, how that needs to improve if we need to attract the kinds of people that need to go to places such as this in different parts of the country. So it will be interesting, I tell you. All right.
You definitely can say that again, Chamberlain, with what we're seeing on the screen, as I did highlight, I think, a few days ago, that Gurara is always a place to see. In the rainy season, it might be treacherous, but if you're able to make it, it certainly will be worth your while.
You can go in dry season in case, so you're safe.
But if you really want to see it, all of its rainy glory, this is about the best time to go see it.
Go to professional hiker or climber, whatever it is, so that's better safe than sorry. Not that it's not, you know how it is, everything in life. Okay, so that said, we need to quickly just highlight this because it has the potential of probably having a lot more negative effect. This scenario, something that happened on Wednesday in Benin City about the CNG, the much talked about CNG. Let's listen to this for a bit. Okay, so it turns out that while the owner of the vehicle went to the CNG point to top the gas, the cylinder in the vehicle exploded. So, but upon questions and trying to find out what exactly happened, it turned out that that CNG cylinder was fit into the vehicle. It was fabricated by a local welder without certification, clearance, guidance, or stupid whatsoever. You know how they just roadside, they just do things thinking, oh yeah, this is the way it should be, so let's go ahead with it. So that's what led to this explosion in Benin City, in Aduawa area of Benin City. So, but of course, the CNG authority, the Presidential CNG Initiative, they put up a statement about all of this. We'll talk about that in a bit. So, but before we also talk a little further on this, now, this other person, I don't know why they just popped up almost at the same time. This other person was also given his own experience of, if all goes well, this is the kind of experience you could get with the CNG. Have a look.
From Lagos down to Ibadan here, at least I feel up at Agri-Ingwe.
Okay.
I CNG gas distribution.
Okay.
So from Agri-Ingwe down to Ibadan, I spent 1,737
Naira.
1,737 naira.
Okay.
So there is nothing to compare to CNG. It's the best. And my engine is doing fine. My AC is okay. Everything is okay. So forgetting that it's going to affect your engine, nothing is happening.
So if you were buying petrol, how much would it be?
I will buy up to 50k. Down, go and flow.
50,000 naira compared to
now I spend 1,700 down there. So definitely I spend 1,700 back. That's 3,400.
Thank you very much. Please tell us your name so that
Akisoya Yakin is my name.
Akisoya Yakin.
Yeah, I remember very well.
Okay, so you tell us what you make of it. I know some people may not still be sold despite all of that. But the DG of the Presidential CNG Initiative says we're investigating that explosion, and that is important to ensure that they are soon to be launched. I think they called it Nigeria Gas Vehicle Monitoring System by Standards Organization of Nigeria. He said it's important that you stick to the rules of all of these things, because if you don't, that kind of scenario could happen. No roadside person should just wake up and think you can fabricate anything whatsoever, because if you do that, you put several people at risk.
Well, it's a good thing we're talking about reputation much later in this program. We have Mr. Yomi Badejo Kusaya coming up later to talk to us about Nigeria Reputation Management Group. Reputation is everything. You know, you work years and years and years to build a reputation. All you have to do is make one slip, and you know, all of those years of hard work can go down the drain.
That reputation is gone, I can tell you. He turned himself to the police. So
who's that?
The welder that welded that CNG cylinder that gets to the vehicle.
Well, I hope it's just the welder's one. I hope it's not, you know, the reputation of CNG, because all you need is one bad press, bad marketing, and that's it. You know, but I don't know where they're still out there. Just a few days ago, I was watching something else. I was watching a program somewhere on YouTube, and I heard a lady. She was just talking about how I was saying, "Oh, are you using CNG now?" She said, me CNG, that thing that is not safe." And I said, "Oh, okay." So there are many people in this boat that still think that CNG is not safe, and they have a right to feel that way. I would, you know, there will be plenty of need for the CNG initiative people to continue to illustrate that this thing is safe. I certainly do not. Look, when I'm going to go and fill my gas cylinder, I don't carry it around. I put it from my house to the gas station. They fill it quickly. I put it back in the car and I take it back home. And I make sure that the distance is not more than 5 kilometers. You know, because even a gas cylinder that is, you know, made for that purpose, I have palpitations just carrying it around in my vehicle. Now some people will say, okay, but Mark, when you drive around and you fuel your tank, don't you? Don't you have palpitations when you do? I'm very careful when I've just filled my tank, because I don't want anybody bashing me from the back. You know, a lot of Nigerians are not safety conscious. They just do things anyhow. Anyhow. So I think that there will be a lot of reassuring, educating. I mean, look at someone just thinks, oh, he or she can weld. I mean, this thing where they this man boot, I fit do them, and that's what you've seen there. Somebody just thinks that they can weld together a cylinder, and somebody can use it to go and fill CNG. Look at that. Yeah. Thanks be to God, it's not more than that, because that entire filling station could have caught fire. That vehicle could have. We didn't hear that the man died.
No. There are some horrific injuries, actually. So they're in the hospital. So
thank God it's not any worse than the injuries that the person sustained. Thank God no life was lost while this happened. Thank God that an entire family. We're just still talking about Jigawa. We still haven't recovered from what happened in Jigawa. So thanks be to God. I think that will be the only good thing I can take out of it, because they've been telling us that CNG is not as flammable as petrol, and in terms of it being safer as a fuel, it is actually safer. It's even safer than the LPG that we used to fill our gas cylinders. So I think that for me is a takeout I'm going to take out from this explosion that has happened. The fact that it did not burst out in flames, but I think that with plenty of educating, plenty of marketing to reassure people that this is safe. They will have to do a lot of illustration to show that this is safe. But in terms of the money, the value you get for money when you eventually change to CNG, I think that the gentleman we listen to right afterwards certainly does make a very good point. And I think that for a number of people, sometimes they're willing to jettison safety for value. So, but we've been told that you can have both with CNG. So let us see people high up there also, you know, use this thing. Let us see maybe the SGF, maybe ministers. Let's see their vehicles fitted with this CNG. Who knows? VP, president, you know, treated with this and then they say, oh, it's in their vehicles as well. So if it's okay for them, it should be okay for you. Aya, what do you think?
I agree with you, Markwe. Absolutely. There is there is nothing to argue with on that one. Demonstrate. I mean, we always say that leadership is always about influence. Leadership is about demonstrating it. If you are saying you are leading and no one is following you, then you're just taking a walk. So you can't expect us to lead from behind without showing us an example. But that said, I think Chairman, you raised a very valid point when the person was trying to cut down. Okay, I like the idea of the CNG thing. No doubt about it. It's a wonderful thing. However, we cannot frustrate or jettison the issue of safety. There are always parameters. So can you also weld the tank of what's it called, of an ordinary, of just any car? I think caution is the word, if you ask me. So anyone who is thinking about transiting to CNG, now you can't just go to anyone. There are specific, and that is why they are very few and far between. There are very specific places that you can go to, and we have to be very, very careful and cautious how this whole thing goes, because at the end of the day, it's our lives, that we're toying with here. So yes, Jimmy, I agree with you totally. I can't wait also to, but you calculate, spending 1 million naira at once, or more than 1 million naira at once, to install a CNG vehicle, and you consider spending 2.4 million naira piecemeal every time you fuel your tank for a whole year. Sometimes I don't know how to put that, because I don't know what you think, but spending more than 2 million naira or more than 2 million naira to fill your tank in a whole year, compared to spending 1.5 million naira to convert that CNG at once. I don't know.
Well, the thing about that is, there are people who can afford it. So they would always do what they can. So just cut your coat according to your cloth. Bottom line.
I hear there's a discount though.
What?
They're giving discount.
On what?
For CNG.
Oh yeah. They're doing that, but I think they'll talk about it a lot more. So just look out for all of those things. Well, here now are some of the dailies this morning.
Let's begin this morning with a warning on the front page of this Nigeria newspaper. Flood alert. Again, FG warns Nigerians to relocate from riverbanks. Plans 5 buffer dams to prevent overflowing from Lagdo Dam. The details of that story you find on page 6 of this Nigeria newspaper this morning. Look at the front page of Daily Independent. Nigeria records 14,237 cholera cases across 35 states. FCT, 378 deaths. NCDC warns of cholera, Lassa fever surge, Marburg virus threat. Attributes recent spike in cholera to heavy rainfall, flooding. The details of that story you'll find on the inside pages of the paper this morning. Blueprint newspaper has Jonathan to Judiciary. Your verdicts on political cases may derail democracy. Knock Supreme Court over PDP-APC crisis. Counter orders, conflicting judgments appalling. That's from IPAC. Front page of the Guardian newspaper. NSAS protest at 4. A specter of abuses, bad leadership still haunting 4 years after. The details you will find on pages 4 and 5 of the Guardian newspaper. For those who've been experiencing service disruptions from the banking system, the New Telegraph is your pick. Service disruptions, more banks to embark on systems upgrade as lenders lose billions to hackers. CBS bank recapitalization key to improving financial system. Details on page 3. Nigerian News Direct has Forex remittances hit $600 million in September from Cardoso. Blames previous administrations for failing to diversify economy. Something similar on the front page of the Nigerian Tribune. FG reforms get knocked. Kudos as World Bank releases report. Reversing reforms will hurt economy. World Bank. Reforms not working from Bauchi Governor. We have been discussing how to stay on course. As from the Finance Minister. FX unification encourages exports. As from CBN. 12 million more Nigerians to join labor market by 2034. The details of that story you'll find on page 6. To Toolkit Business, the Daily Times newspaper, at Business Forum in Sweden, Shettima woos investors to Nigeria's growing business climate, urges them to seize opportunities in nation's MSMEs, agriculture, digital economy, others. We were to invest $100 million, others commit to multi-million-dollar tech hubs, MSMEs, agriculture. Ericsson to build $19 million tech hub in Nigeria. The details on the inside pages of the paper. Daily Trust newspaper. Security agents supplying arms to terrorists, bandits. That's from the NSA. I hear someone say, really? Says weapons used by criminals belong to FG. Expert wants corporates arrested, prosecuted. 2,400 obsolete, unserviceable, illicit ammunition destroyed. The details on the inside pages. Vanguard newspaper says, FG's reforms not working. Bauchi governor counters World Bank. Says people hungry may lynch us. Reversing reforms will spell doom for Nigeria. It's from the World Bank. Why we must sustain reform. That's from Edo. CBN doesn't determine FX rate. That's from Cardoso. My fear about reforms. World Bank VP and Chief Economist Jill. The details on page 5. Business Day has Nigeria's economy riding on 3 deflated tires. As from the World Bank, says productive jobs key to poverty reduction. FG stabilizing economy, Naira, says Edo. The details of that story on the inside pages. And these are some of the papers we have for you today.
Okay, so there you go. Those are some of the dailies this morning that you can always go ahead and let us know what your thought or mindset is about any matter that you might have heard there. But yes, we're going to go ahead and talk about Nigeria. How do you ensure, in spite of all of what's going on, the image out there is still favorable? That's a job of work, I tell you. We've got Mr. Yomi Badijo-Kunsan here with us, but he's going to be talking to us in a moment. But before then, I'd like to take a look at this report, which highlights part of what we're going to talk about. Have a look.
It's a gathering of top government officials, private sector players, and young people who are represented here by members of the Nigeria Youth Service Corps as the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations launched the Nigeria Reputation Management Group in Abuja. Born out of the realization of the country's image on the global scene, the Nigeria Reputation Management Group will drive a new narrative that will challenge the stereotypes.
We are here to unveil what will become Nigeria's biggest possible transformation pillar and driver, the reputation project. The reputation of our country needs some help. Today's event is NIPR's robust response to the call.
The initiative is both government and citizens driven with enormous shared responsibility.
Nigeria's reputation, again I repeat, needs a radical transformation. And I'm not referring to our standing on international rankings. Instead, I'm talking about the reputation that is built on the integrity of our institutions, the transparency of our leadership, and the well-being of our people. So today I offer a charge. First, to our politicians and leaders. The mandate that you politicians hold is a sacred trust, not a personal opportunity for enrichment. Ethical leadership must become the standard, not the exception. And to the citizens, I urge you to remember that the future of our country lies not only in the hands of our leaders, but in our own actions. We cannot demand integrity from others if we do not hold ourselves accountable.
The way people are using social media to destroy individuals, to destroy the nation, is absolutely unacceptable. It's very, very bad indeed. Because you see, we can all work together and have a good reputation for the Federal Republic of Nigeria. One or two people can just destroy it. And this program will not go anywhere if the people of Nigeria continue to do what we are doing now, destroying the very basis of our existence.
Honorable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Nigeria can boast of an array of sons and daughters who are making Africa proud on the global stage. However, the negative behavior of a few have mostly been spotlighted by social and mainstream media, a development the government urges citizens to challenge.
Nigerians, both at home and in the diaspora, are the primary ambassadors of our national brand. Every interaction, every social media post, and every business transaction contributes to how Nigeria is perceived globally.
We must find a way of striking a true balance between, especially for the media, reporting accurately, objectively, and also being patriotic about your country.
The high point of the event is the digital launch, which highlights the pivotal role, professionalism, trust, communication, inclusivity, and ownership in the new drive to recreate Nigeria's reputation nationally and internationally.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have to blow my cheeks out because it's a task, I tell you. Mr. Yemebadi Jokusa is here with he's the president, African Public Relations Association, having served in the NIPR for a long time. Good morning, thank you for coming out today.
Good morning, Chamberlain. But let me say, I'm here as the DG of the Nigeria Reputation Management Group.
Yes, I should add that.
What a task to take on.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I sit down and think about this, I feel just, it's something, it's a lot, you know.
Yeah.
Is it when you travel? Is it when you're even in your own country? Is it when you see some things happen? Or is it when you're driving out there? There's just so many moving parts.
Too many things.
Too many moving parts. How do you go about this? Where do you start from?
Well, for so long, the gates of our national reputation gate has been left unmanned. And that's why all of this have happened. And so the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations decided that must stop. There must be a deliberate and intentional effort at manning the gates of our nation's reputation. And that's why this came about. The origins of this started in 2021 when we had what we call the Citizen Summit of the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations. So we went around the 6 zones and the Federal Capital Territory, and of course, even one for diaspora. And we gauged the minds of Nigerians. And then we had a Citizen Summit in 2022. And one of the fallouts was we should come up with what we call the Nigeria Reputation Management Group. And the whole essence of it is that while another group talks about the economy, we must talk about the reputation. You cannot have a great economy without reputation. And reputation also goes with the economy, vice versa. They work in tandem. And so we realized the enormity of the task ahead of us. And we felt that the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations was best positioned, or is best positioned, to be able to deliver on this mandate, because we are the ones who have been trained professionally to deal with issues of reputation. We have chapters in 36 states of the country, and then, of course, the FCT. And so we believe that, no matter how onerous, no matter how demanding, no matter how tasking it may be, we must start it. And that's what we launched on Tuesday.
My own mind is actually thinking, I mean, the word that comes to my mind when I look at and think about the group is ambitious. I'm like,
audacious. I think the word you're looking for is audacious. We're being audacious.
Yeah,
I agree with
audacious, yes. But this is also ambitious because we have since realized that, it takes, 200 million people now have access to the outside world. This is not something that or you say, there's only one gate. There are now numerous gates.
That's right.
So you have to ask yourself, when you say that there is a reputation management group, will they have to be signed up to you, or precisely what are you going to be doing? Because here we are, just yesterday, the Vice President Kashim Shettima was speaking to investors in Sweden, and they were saying, Nigeria is not what you hear. It's so much better than what you hear. It's still the place to do business, etc., etc. Right. He goes on to say that, but citizens are living these experiences daily, and a number of them are speaking up. I think it was one of the guests or one of your respondents who was making reference to social media, and they're sharing their experiences on social media as they feel it. So how do you intend to marry that with what it is that you're setting out to do with the reputation management group?
Okay, let me say, in terms of social mobilization, it has been done in this country before. And I'm sure many of us remember MAMSA, and we had Professor Jerry Gana, who was the driver of MAMSA there. And
who was the one decrying social media, by the way?
Yes, I mean, the complexities have changed.
Yes.
But it still doesn't mean we cannot work it. The truth of the matter is that if you do not have a set of what I would call core values or guiding principles, let's talk about guardrails that Nigerians must hold and bring it to the consciousness, to their consciousness. Let me give you an example. Although it was the military era, so maybe not exactly. Why? War against indiscipline. And till today, when you go to Yaba bus stop, people still queue. They still queue at Yaba bus stop. If you are going to University of Lagos, I still see them when I drive past. And it shows you that it is possible. With leadership, with vision, you can do it. Nature abhors a vacuum. And if you have not if you've let certain things unattended, these are the consequences that we are suffering from. But when we come back and we bring back like a reawakening of some of those core values, nobody wants to live, well, let me not say that. Most people don't want to live in a lawless society. Most people don't want to live in a society that things are done anyhow. So, and I always give this example, and I'm sure you've experienced it. You're driving and you're on your lane and somebody pulls out on the opposite, pulls out, faces traffic, and you're looking at him thinking that at the end of the road where there's a policeman, he'll be arrested or he'll be reprimanded. And then he gets there and nothing happens. So there are no consequences for bad behavior. And then the tendency is that the next person will pull out, the next person will pull out, and before you know it, all of us will pull out. So when we say to you, you can't do that. So one of the things, and maybe I'm sure we'll get there, one of the things we are going to launch is a reputation charter. And what does a reputation charter do? It gives you the do's and don'ts as an organization, as an individual. This act I'm about to engage in, this act I'm about to undertake, does it improve the reputation of Nigeria or does it take away from it? And one of our core values is ownership, which means that the issue of Nigeria's reputation does not lie with the government. Or let me say it doesn't lie with the government only. That's why we call this a private sector-led initiative. It's a private sector-led initiative, whereby we will say to people that it starts with you and I. Let's ask ourselves. I mean, there are times that I'm in a hurry too, and my driver knows that I'm in a hurry, and he's thinking of, and I can almost read his thoughts, and I say, you don't dare. You don't dare, because I am in this car. Even if I am not in this car, some of our cars carry badges. So you work for channels. So can you imagine? You have a badge of channels and you're driving against traffic. So there are many issues that have to do with the reputation of the country. And we want to bring it to the consciousness of every Nigerian that when you do this, does it help or does it take away?
Quite a few things. When you speak about that, the queuing example, and then you talk about governments, the role they have to play. But there are a few things that also come up. Because, for instance, in that same Yaba where they queue opposites, you see how chaotic it is when they don't queue, they just do whichever way. But when they queue, you see that those campus shuttle, they know there's a leadership right there on campus that tell them, no, this is how this thing should go. And so when you're ever going to enter all those buses, you know that, look, the buses are there anyway. There's coordination, there's leadership, some type of leadership, whichever way. But on the other side, that's why I ask about the government role. No matter how much the private sector does, how do you quantify or can you even measure the essence, the role that the authorities have got to play? Because so many people now, they see what these chaps do up there, and they just take a leading from all of those.
Okay, so you're quite right. I'm a firm believer of that everything rises and falls with leadership. And that's why even the Nigerian Institute of Public Relations, we are setting up a university, and it's a university of public relations and leadership. So we are putting leadership first. And what this NRMG is doing is that it's not a trumpet for government. We're also going to hold government accountable. So it starts with you. As I was coming to the station now, early this morning, rain, light traffic, I see a governor's convoy blowing the siren when there's even no traffic. So what is the siren about? Is it a symbol of authority? Is it a symbol of oppression? What it is? Look, I understand that maybe if you're a senior government official, I don't really think you should have a siren. And you know what? Some of us, they've been held to standard. When Babatunde Raji Fashola was the governor of Lagos State, he didn't use sirens and he got the business done. He was one of the people one of the most effective governors we've had in this country. And it shows that it's not about the sirens. It's not about the sirens. So those are some of the things that we will be putting forth. Let me just quickly share with you the core values of the Nigerian Reputation Management Group. Ethics, commitment to constitution, respect of law, rules, regulation, and professional ethics that ensures Nigeria's adherence to rule of law and ethical conduct. 2, professionalism. We will strive for a strong national professional base that guarantees high national productivity based on merit and excellence. Look at what happened in Edo. An artisan fabricated a CNG cylinder. I mean, we can teach you to do it right. Do it right. Don't do things. I mean, it was a friend of mine who came he visited, he's an architect, and he visited Nigeria. And he says, you know, if you look at the walls, even the plastering of walls, do you know most of our walls are not even? So when you take it even from the level of artisans, so we're promoting professional trust. Nigeria is operating in a huge trust deficit. So that even when government tells you the truth, you do not believe them. And therefore, that trust gap must be filled. And then number 4, communication, effective communication. Because advocacy is key to learning, you know, what we call mindsets, to change mindsets, inclusivity, bringing everybody in. And that's the fact that it's not just this person, it's just that all of us are in it. And then finally, ownership. It starts with you and I. As difficult as it may sound, if you and I do what we ought to do, you know, there's this, what do we call it? Is it a song? Is it a hymn? This little light of mine, I'm going to make it, I'm going to let it shine. So if I let my light shine, Malcolm lets his light shine, Chamberlain and Ayo, we've done our bit. And it will be infectious, and I believe that.
Well, I know that Ayo cannot wait to get into this conversation because Ayo has been on and on about national values, you know,
and ethics.
He and I, we've had conversations about this, and I know how passionate he can be. Look, do you know our slogan for the Nigeria Reputation Management Group? Reputation first. Mr. President, reputation first.
So let me ask you, I mean, is this something, is this a closed membership group, or are you going to be admitting Nigerians?
All Nigerians. You see, this is not it's led by the Institute, but we realize that it's a national movement. So we're not going to be saying that if you're not a member of NIPR, you can volunteer. And even indeed, on that day, we found many people, young people. There were this young, the students, they drove in from Jos. Students, I don't know where they got the money, 2 students, and they said, look, we read about this thing and we want to be part of it. And we need especially the young people because they're the next generation. And they're the ones that, if you have a youngster, I have a 25-year-old, they really don't want to know about Nigeria because they feel that the system has failed them. If there are those of them who live outside the country, they don't want to come back. And for those who are inside the country, they don't want to watch. You and I, we had that conversation on Tuesday with the chairman. They don't want to watch channels. They don't want to watch any of this. Not because it's channel per se. They just feel that all of us are embodiment of this problem or this letting them down as a country where their aspirations are not met. So when we saw the students from UniJOS, the president of NIPR, the least we could do was to fund their return because they said they just read about it. I met another young lady 2 days ago who said she just read about it and she showed up. So you know what that means? There's an appetite for change. Nigerians are just looking for the group or the person to lead them to that place. And NIPR has taken that role on.
Thank you. You know, well, just hold your gunpowder, Mr. Yokusaya. You know, let me just go straight to it. This question is going to sound like a curveball, but perhaps just to put it out there. Reputation can be positive or negative. So when we talk about Nigeria's reputation that we want to manage, what exactly are we talking about? Let's begin from there. Because there are those who would say, I mean, you talked about the fact that if you don't have a good reputation, you can't have a good economy. Looking at it from the private sector, if you don't have a good reputation, you cannot build a brand because your brand is your reputation, what you can do, the trust, the promise you make, and that you deliver on over time. So what is Nigeria's reputation that we want to build on? The one we have now is not what we want. So what's the Nigerian reputation we want to build?
Okay, so what is reputation? The reputation is as a result of the character that you show, and the character that you show is as a result of the values that you hold. Now, what is the reputation of Nigeria? You can answer that, I'm sure. We all know that when you say when you mention Nigeria, what comes to mind? I don't want to repeat the negatives here, but we all know that in many places, or when we've traveled out of the country, we've been pulled over, we've been delayed, people have viewed us with a lot of suspicion, and so on and so forth, because of the activities of a few bad eggs. And that seems to be, has become the predominant reputation of Nigeria. Some people will argue with you that reputation is positive, that you can't have a bad reputation because if it's a bad reputation, then it's no reputation. But for the sake of argument, let me take it that somebody says you have a bad reputation. So there are things about us that don't go well. One biggest thing is a trust. There's a trust deficit. Let's take it internal and external. So we're not just talking about the external, we're not talking about how foreigners view us. How do we even view ourselves? So Nigerians don't trust government. I'm not sure the government trusts the people. And you understand, there's just this huge trust deficit. And let me say to you, the only license any organization has to operate is trust. The only reason why people are tuning into you channels is because they believe that what they hear from you is their facts. The minute they imagine that what you're giving out is not accurate, they will stop listening to you. The only reason why you have me here is because you trust that I will contribute to your program. If I'm unable to do that, you will not have me in this chair. So the first thing we need to do is that we need to rebuild the trust amongst the various stakeholders in Nigeria. We don't
And I dare
trust
say,
the police. Yeah.
And I dare
the
say,
police probably
yes.
doesn't trust the young people.
Unfortunately. And I dare say, that really is the first step, building that trust. It's depleted over time, a long time ago. I find an oxymoron of sorts. Nigerians love Nigeria. Nigerians love Nigeria. However, what do you love about Nigeria? Oh, Nigeria is just wonderful. Okay. How do you represent Nigeria? We find that difficult. We don't trust government officials because, just as you said, people don't have this trust for government officials, no matter what level they are. But we love Nigeria. So what is the Nigerian icon that is going to help us build this trust, that we're going to build this trust on? How do we begin to rebuild that trust? You've talked about communication and the role it has to play. Perception, right now, we know where it is. So how do we begin the process of building this trust so that we can build this perception?
Very easy. And I'll tell you why. Let's find out what are those things that led to the trust deficit. And when I mean the trust deficit, I'm not talking about in government, just about this administration. It's over the years. Take, for instance, this subsidy. We've been hearing this story for a long time now. And said, oh, if we take away this amount of money, we use it to build roads, we use it. We're not supposed to be here. If we had done what we ought to have done, maybe Nigerians will not be sure. I mean, take the issue of even the refineries, the fixing of refineries. The goalpost keeps changing, keeps moving. So let's go back to where it started from. What led to the trust deficit? The fact that government, and I'm not talking about just this government, I'm talking about government as a whole, and over the years, have been insincere with the people. The politicians have been insincere with the people. We make promises that we are unable to keep. So we must promote transparency. We must promote integrity, that you will say something and people will find you there. You will say to us that, guys, let's tighten our belts. All right? And we see you also being squeezed. We don't see you with any belts. You understand? And I'm not speaking to any government in particular. I'm speaking across the board. So once government begins to show signs of commitment to the people, honestly, look, I always give this example, and we all have children. Let me tell you what. Let me tell you a story. There's somebody I know, and when they were growing up, her father always said to them, this year we are going for summer. Because you know what, we are going on summer holidays because many of her colleagues or friends were going on summer. So she would have boasted to her friends that, oh, we're going on summer holiday. And then it comes and it never happens. And guess what? The first money she had of her own, what did she use it to do? To go on the summer holiday. So when you get home and you say to your child, I'm going to buy you a bicycle. And he goes on to tell his friends that my dad says he's going to buy me a bicycle. And his birthday comes. And he says, Daddy, where's that bicycle? And he says, I'll bring it home tomorrow. And then you do it again, you do it again. What do? You begin to erode the trust that child has for you. And it's the same thing that not just our government, other stakeholders, because even in private sector, it occurs. So don't let me look as if I'm lampooning government alone. Even we as citizens, we need to rebuild that trust.
Well, I say the mission and then the vision, some of these core values are also hugely important. I also see the focus here.
Yes.
Reputation summits. Yes. You're going to have Nigeria Reputation Day, Nigeria Reputation Charter, Reputation Champions, Advisory. There's going to be a workshop.
An annual reputation. Let me just quickly take the summit.
Yeah.
So every year we're going to have a gathering just along the lines or in what happens in the economy. And we're going to talk about what are those things that we need to do to help our reputation. That's very key. So every year there will be that summit. focus just on reputation. What have we done right? What have we done wrong? Then we're also proposing October 15 of every year as the Nigeria Reputation Day that will be celebrated both locally and globally. On that day, the focus and attention will be on Nigeria's reputation and pushing those things that would enhance it and de-emphasizing those things that will erode from it. We're also going to have talked about the reputation charter. We're looking for reputation champions because nowadays you find that we have very few models, role models to go by. Our role models, I'm sorry to say, a very quick one. There's a gentleman who said he went to his village and he sat with his uncle, and then this young man came in. I said, "Oh, is that not so?" Person said, "Yeah, he's doing very well. Oh, he's really doing very well." And so he tells his uncle, "What's he doing?" He says, "He's doing Yahoo." Whoa. So he says, "Uncle, he's doing Yahoo, and you're saying he's doing very well?" He said, "Leave that thing. It's the money that these colonialists took from us. And he said he had to leave the function because he couldn't believe that his father's brother could speak like that. And that is the role model that's role model we're beginning to give to our children. I don't want to mention other names, but you know what? So we need to readdress that. Who are the role models when we were growing up? You guys are broadcasters. I'm sure you must have watched NTA or any of those stations and you have said, "I like the way John Momo cast the news. I want to be like him. I want to be like this person." So we want to bring that back. We'll have an annual reputation report, which means a concise report which will track what we're doing. So which areas are we doing well and which areas are we not doing? What are those things that are giving us down markers and what are those things that are giving us up markers? And of course, advisory services to various organizations, and then workshops that we'll carry around and we will enhance, just to train people or enlighten them on things they can and they should do. That like I said, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine in my corner. If I do it in my business, you do it in your business. And then finally, advocacy. We're going to embark on a lot of advocacy. This is part of what we're doing here. Thanks to you guys.
Anytime. As a matter of fact, I think it's something that everyone needs to be on board, because I mean, there are the people in different parts of the country who are doing things, and then it would not be out of place for at least wherever we are, whoever you are, they can recognize those people because they need a pat on the back. Because I mean, such people, they are leading lights, and people can also. You don't have to be up there to be a leader. Wherever you are, can lead from where you are. So that's right. It's something that. We welcome anytime, any day. It's one country, the only one we have at that. So there's only one Nigeria, actually. So yes, we wish yourself and the entire team, and of course the country well, because I mean, if it is not well, where would we be? So we thank you for coming on, and we wish you all the best in whichever way that we can help.
You can be rest assured we are going to be knocking on your door. We are going to be. I see myself or other members of my team being here repeatedly because only yesterday I was speaking to regulators across Nigeria, and I was saying to them, are you as regulators, do you scare us, or do you? Are we happy with you? So when I hear EFCC or another regulator, NERC or NCC, am I afraid?
Or are you in bed with them?
You understand? So they should make me comfortable. It's part of, and don't forget what we say, reputation first. Because when you think reputation first, your attitude or your approach to everything changes completely. Reputation first. Thank you.
Yes, it's time to celebrate those out there who are doing whatever they're doing to make sure somebody's life is better. So it doesn't matter which corner you are in, we will try and find you and celebrate you, because you are those who we should actually celebrate. I think we'll do that a lot more and focus on those kinds of people, because
that's right.
That's what reputation management also needs, I might add. So thank you again.
Thank you very much. for
the
having
DG.
me, and I look forward to coming back again.
Absolutely, always welcome. So we're back in a moment. Don't go away.
Heads of superior courts and other courts across all cadres of the judiciary of the country have gathered for this year's edition of the National Conference on Judges' Performance and Evaluation. Also in attendance are the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court and some retired justices of the Apex Court. The primary aim of the conference is to discuss all things pertaining to judges' performance evaluation and an opportunity to reinvigorate their commitment to the bench. The theme of this year's conference, Judgecraft, Performance and the Way Forward.
Well, yes, indeed, the lawyers, the courts, they're all connected. And so we've got Mr. Ikazo Akariwe here with us. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today.
Good morning.
So quite a number of things playing out with respect to the laws, the judiciary, the constitution. In fact, the Establishment Act of the EFCC happens to be one of the one which Mr. Olisa Abakoba seems to be saying. How many are trying to understand what is he asking? EFCC is illegal, it shouldn't be, or what exactly? What you also must have read about all of this. What's going on with that?
Yes, Olisa Abakoba, ONSAN, wrote a letter to the National Assembly the 14th of this month to the committee dealing with the constitutional amendment, yes. And he says that EFCC is illegal, that the National Assembly went beyond her powers in establishing EFCC. And that has created a lot of ripples. Right now, we also have a court case. About 16 governors have gone to court challenging the right of the EFCC to look into states' accounts. So it's a topical one now. And I'm hopeful that in discussing this, one will not be breaching the principle of sub judice. But I think that Agbakoba, let me try to understand him and perhaps explain him. I think he is standing on the principle of strict federalism. I haven't read the letter, but I read reports of the letter. And I think he's saying that the states are the federating units, and the federal government cannot look into the accounts of states. Institutions, agencies, departments of the federal government cannot investigate the states because we are a federal republic. But that's the point I believe he is making. And I would say yes and no. I would say yes, you are correct, and no, you are not. And this is why I would say so. Although Nigeria goes by the nomenclature, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Nigeria we actually a unitary federalism hybrid as a carryover from military government. We are both a unitary nation and a federal nation, a hybrid, which is why the NJC, which is a federal agency, is in charge of the salaries of the judges of the states. So if we're going to pursue a strict federalism, then the NJC will have to just take care of the federal, and then the states will take care of their judges. So we must always bear that in mind, that Nigeria will practice a cooperative federalism as opposed to a dual federalism, where the federating units mind their business and they hardly overlap with the central government. So that's why I would say he's correct and he's not. We should be evolving towards a pure federalism, even though I doubt if there's any pure federalism anywhere in the world, because there must always be elements of overlap. But the problem in Nigeria, I would think, is that perhaps our unitary experience is as much as the federal experience, because for about 30 years, the military were in power. And as you well know, when the military were in power, they transferred state governors, they breached the principles of federalism. And the makers of the Constitution did not think deeply enough, in my view, and they just maintained a lot of the things the military did. And so we are now operating a unitary federal hybrid. But is the EFCC really illegal? Supreme Court has made so many statements on that. So I'm a bit surprised. Amadi and the Federal Republic of Nigeria is a celebrated case where the Supreme Court, Mukhtar, JSC as she then was, she later became CJN, categorically said that the FCC had a right to look into the accounts of the states. That the FCC sues in the name of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, not in the name of the federal government of Nigeria. That case,
they're all part of the republic.
Yes, that case created a distinction between federal government of Nigeria and the Federal Republic. The Federal Republic of Nigeria covers everybody, the states and the central government. But EFCC does not sue in the name of the federal government. So Supreme Court said you have the right to. I mean, that EFCC has the right to do what they are doing.
Talk to us quickly on this. Yes. How do you think we should correct this so that there will not be any overlap moving forward?
I think that states should be required to domesticate the EFCC Act. I think there's one state now.
Not just EFCC. I'm talking about across board.
Across board. Okay. When the federal government, when the central government, when the National Assembly makes a law, an act of parliament, it is my view that those acts of parliament should be domesticated in the state so that they can be effective in the state. And I think in a cooperative federalism, where they have a National Council of States meeting, the governors and the presidency can meet. Corruption is a virus. We need to deal with it. So we are setting up EFCC, and we need your buy-in so that there can be a domestication.
All right. So we'll focus on some of these other matters when we return. But for now, I have to cross over and go for Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. So don't go away. Start now.
Thank you so much, Chamberlain. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily, where we do business for just about 30 minutes. And then we'll continue that conversation waiting for you on the other side of the program. We start from the global space now. Good oil features steadied on Friday after strong U.S. retail sales data. But Chinese economic indicators remain mixed, and prices were headed for their biggest weekly loss in more than a month. And that's on concerns about demand. We see a bit of gain on Brent, for instance. We have 8 cents, that's 0.1%. Still on $74, hardly moved this week on this $74, $74.53, while we see WTI still on $70. A level of certainty and stability is what we're saying on crude prices for this week. It's up 0.2%. And just as said earlier, the factors driving it include the retail sales from the United States was slightly higher than expected for September, and investors are still pricing in a 92% chance for a Federal Reserve rate cut in November. Meanwhile, third quarter economic growth in the world's top oil importer, China has been moving the market. It was at its lowest pace since early 2023, though consumption and industrial output figures for September beat forecasts. China's latest data dump offered somewhat of a mixed bag, with the country now officially falling short of its 5% growth target for the year. And the absence of a sizable fiscal push seems to leave some reservations on overall oil demand. Remember that stimulus plan that they have has not met expectations, and so we still see demand and data from China moving the markets one way or the other. Go to the Naira now. Yesterday, there was no intervention from the regulator in Nigeria. That's the Central Bank of Nigeria. And we saw that in both markets, it was a drop for the Naira, 0.05%. On MFM, it opened at 1,659 Naira 69 kobo, but closed at 1,660 Naira 49 kobo. For NAFEX, it also dropped very, very light right there. So a bit of stability. Do we accept 1,600 as our resistance point now? I wonder, would have hoped that it would be 1,500, but this is our reality at this time. Talking about the value of Naira, and I know you've seen and heard that story or that news from World Bank that Nigeria's Naira is one of the worst performing at this time. It's in the same grade with the the birr of Ethiopia, and the South Sudan pound. The three worst performing currency on the continent, unfortunately, comes from the giant of Africa. Now, 1.298 trillion naira, that's the total sum that was shared as revenue distribution to the federal, state, and local governments by the Federation Accounts Allocation Committee, FAC. The amount, which comprises statutory revenue from value-added tax, electronic money transfer, levy, and other sources, is higher by over 95 billion naira when compared to the 1.203 trillion naira distributed in August. The brief breakdown of the increased revenue distribution report released by the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation shows that the federal government received 424.86 billion, states got 453.72 billion, while local government, the autonomy local government, now they received 329.88 billion. However, the amount distributed as 13 of mineral derivative revenue to relevant states was slightly lower than previous month at 90.41 naira. One of the conversations going on now is the renewables. While the price of PMS hits the roof, alternative has been offered renewables, talking about gas in this instance in Nigeria. CNG and the LCCI, that's the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry, they're adding their voice to this, calling for the adoption of renewable, especially CNG, as a way to accelerate industrialization in the country. They say it is cheaper, more economical, and it should be affordable in due course.
Dangote just bought 1,000 CNG trucks, and it's a beginning. I don't know how CNG will be in the private cars, in the small cars, but definitely when you talk about trucks, transport, heavy vehicle, heavy equipment, CNG is there and is very, very good. Some people don't like it, like the drivers, because it's not so easy to take CNG out of the truck. One thing is environmental, another thing is practical and economical. Nigeria has so much gas and it should be utilized. This energy can also be used for creating more electric power. And I think, well, in my country, Norway, we have about 90% of the cars now sold are electric cars. This would also be good for Nigeria. Being CNG, being electric, being whatever it is, we need energy.
All right, so that's it. I'm still talking about energy security in Nigeria. Well, I wonder if this is good news. The story that the importation of PMS has reduced in the country. We had that story yesterday. Perhaps it was connected to the operations of Dangote refinery. But are more people adopting CNG and other alternatives? I wonder. But what does it mean, actually? What are the implications as S&P Global Commodity Insights have reported that there's been a major drop in importation the first week of October? They say there's a weekly drop, a weekly average of 1.3 million is what was recorded in August. And meanwhile, for October, it's less than even a million. Let's talk about the implications of this with an oil and gas expert. Joins us right here in the studio, Dr. Wisdom Enang is right here. Dr. Enang, good morning and thank you for your time.
Hi, good morning, Guinea. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think what jumps out from the story that we are now importing less petrol is that we now need less FX. But then, do we have other detrimental consequences that could come with this?
I mean, I think it's a win-win for us that we're now importing less petrol. We're producing, because at the end of the day, if you look at the entire petroleum value chain, you have just 20% for the upstream, and then you have the midstream, the downstream, and the gas sectors accounting for about 80%. And what that means is, and this is what South Korea does, they take crude from Nigeria, for example, refine it, and they're able to harness the 80% of the value chain. That way, they're able to provide jobs for their people. They're able to industrialize, because industrialization has a direct correlation with consumption of energy. So, in fact, what you find is that it's a very good thing. But the numbers that are being reeled out kind of test some of the realities that we thought we knew. The first is, when you look at how much we're importing now at the moment, we are importing about, say, 44.6 million liters of PMS on a weekly basis, according to the data that we have just mentioned. And then what we also find is that that translates to about 6.5 million liters per day of consumption. The Dangote on the other side are able to pull out between, let's say 15, which is the minimum they were going to start, million liters per day, to 25. We don't know where they are exactly, but within that space. But even if we add 25 to 6, that's about 31, right? And the country isn't blowing off. Then how did we arrive at Nigeria's consumption being 50 million liters per day?
And doesn't that bring in the question of the smuggling around the border?
That's the point I'm trying to make. Which is why Dangote had said himself that with the technology that we have, so basically when you set up barriers against all of this stuff, you're setting up the equipment barrier, you're setting up the process barrier and the people barrier. And so he said, with the technology we have, we'll be able to tell Nigeria's exact consumption. Meaning that when I add those numbers, even with the worst case of the best case of 25 million liters, plus what we're importing at the moment, 6.5, you find out that you're about 31.5. How does that translate to 50 million liters as quoted by the NMDPRA? Meaning that we need a lot of clarity on our actual consumption, because that's the basis for our macroeconomic planning for the downstream sector.
I guess that's why IPMAN say they now have a task force that's supposed to take care of smuggling and vandalism, and I wonder if they can cope with it, because it seems to be a very technical and expert-driven illegal business in the
Exactly.
country.
It's quite a very large cartel that does all of that. But I think my biggest worry is when we look at the impact of all of those on pricing, right? There are people that feel so. I kind of juggle two sort of pricing regimes on my head. The pricing regime that gives us the true value of industrializing the economy, consuming our own crude, which should be less than the imported variant of the PMS, right? However, some people say, well, smuggling will still happen except you make sure the price outside is exactly the price inside. So the question I have on my mind is, we're not actually paying for just the price of the commodity or the cost of producing and then making some profits. We're paying to make sure it's at parity with other places so that we don't have smuggling. But that's paying for I would like to, for lack of a better word, negligence.
So how do we compensate the consumers who are paying for that negligence?
I think the payment should even happen in this first instance, because this is when we should strip out we should look at the entire value chain. What is eating our lunch on this value chain, and then who is responsible for all of those, and then find out where are the areas. Right, fine, we've tried to liberate the market, and we're getting on just fine. We've gone to a point where we've gone from monopoly to where we allow the petroleum marketers approach the Dangote refinery and strike a deal directly. So it's a work in progress.
But has that started in reality?
No, there's still negotiations going on.
Yeah, okay.
Right?
I just wanted to be sure.
There's still
the
negotiations
status
going on. And then we're moving slowly, but there's still something eating our lunch. The petroleum value chain isn't just about off-taking. It's also making sure you minimize the losses and make sure that we are able to consolidate those gains for the Nigerian people.
Is there a way to handle this smuggling? I know that there are devices that are supposed to be put on trucks, so it monitors when a truck has offloaded, where it's offloaded. We know of these devices, but I guess using it to actually track this becomes a will of the people.
Correct. So like I laid out before, we have, 3 critical barriers. The people barrier, which is the most important because the people barrier control the process and the equipment barrier. And then we have the equipment barrier, which of course technology and all of those, equipments play a very big role. And then we have the process barrier, which talks about what happens when and who does what. That is really important. I think we need to segregate them and begin to define things. The other thing is that when we're looking at stitching all of this together, I like to recommend a PDRR method, which I would call predict, detect, respond, and recover. Right? The predict is using all of those technology and making sure that you're able to, for example, if you're taking a consignment somewhere, we should know where each liter was taken out and at which point. There's technology for that.
Who's supposed to monitor that? Even if we have the technology, I mean, it's just like putting a CCTV in your house. Somebody has to follow up and watch the visuals and be able to take action.
And that's always the thing. I mean, for me, what I'll be thinking, if I was to think for the government, is set up a special task force for that, because I think that's
extra expenses.
But the benefits are worth it. We're talking about energy security. It's very important. It's the basis for even the functionality of our society today. So it's very important. And then when you go from the predict standpoint, you're able to get that data. You're able to mine the data and detect. So, for example, if a truck is out, maybe going on the road and it stops for an hour, is it because the truck has broken down, or is it because there's actually an active move to evacuate some of the inventory there for smuggling purposes? And then you go to the respond. That's where you have the human interface. That's where people begin to, after looking at data, what do we need to do? Do we get in touch with the driver? Is there a secondary protocol that would check what the primary protocol had done and make sure, or detected, and make sure that everything is fine? And then there's the recover approach. When you're talking about recover, you're talking about making sure that you send a signal to people that this is not acceptable. That starts with naming and shaming. That starts with making sure that even when they're brought to justice, that justice actually prevails. And that's speaking directly to our judiciary.
Well, I mean, I don't want to go there because we see what's going on in the political scene with the judiciary. So, I mean, adding this there, I don't know, what to expect. And it's really a sad one, because what it does is it strips the common man of hope.
Absolutely.
Of things being done the way they should be done.
Yeah, I think just to speak to that, my biggest worry is the way we represent things, right? I hear people talk about the competitiveness of the market simply because we're now having, these suppliers of PMS go on to negotiate with the Dangote refinery. And that I hear people class that as being creating a competitive market, and I worry. And the reason is this. The people that are going there to be some of these petroleum marketers are actually not, what they're doing basically is not creating their own demand. They are reflecting Nigeria's demand, right? So the demand curve stays basically the same way, and then the supply curve stays basically the same way. So there's really, that doesn't class as a competitive market. A competitive market will be where there are options, for example, the CNG option, and I can choose whichever option I want to use. And so there's an interaction of demand moving up and down depending on what I feel is more convenient. And then right now in our homes, we make that decision between the electric cooker and the gas, depending on which one we work out the tariff to be cheaper. And then you find out, and then on the supply end, we also have more refineries, and they're coming on with their own playbook. Some of them are coming at different pricing, and that's possible because if you think about a refinery that is solely a refinery that is getting inputs from feedstock from other sources, and a refinery that has its own field, right? They can afford to say, okay, well, let's discount our downstream operations because we're making a lot of profits on the upstream, and that could affect their pricing. When we have that sort of interaction between that sort of demand and the sort of supply that I talked about, then we can have a very competitive market.
Do you see that happening with Dangote? I mean, they said from first quarter of next year, they'll be getting their own crude.
Well, but I saw the numbers, and the numbers is 20,000 barrels per day, roughly, to start. That doesn't scratch it versus the 650,000 barrels per day sort of production capacity. But it's a good start. But I think by the time they reach maybe getting a field of about an expanse of fields worth 200,000 barrels, then we could play around with numbers. Because I'll give you a case study. Companies like the Watersmith refinery, for example, that have their own fields, have been able to work in that space comfortably because they also take credit for the profits that they make in the upstream sector.
But in all of this, I think, are we now totally deregulated, would we wake up one day and say, oh, we want to remove another part of subsidy, and so we expect the price to move again?
So for me, basically, I think subsidy, well, the pricing staying constant, right, are hinged on a number of factors. Some are internal, some are external. For example, the war happening, well, the crisis between Israel, Lebanon, and Iran is one of the things that can shift us, because if the price of crude goes up, obviously the pricing needs to go up. Then the internal thing is we need to think about the exchange rates, right? It drives everything. And when I told people, say, well, if we're not importing, how does that drive? It still drives everything. Because think about it, the original investment was done in dollars. The benchmark of the expected return on investment is done in dollars. And so without your knowledge, you're actually paying an extra component of the pricing to ensure that there's an adequate return for investors.
There's even the crude. Crude is priced in dollars.
Of course.
Even when you're buying it in domestic.
Correct, absolutely.
So, I mean, that still fits into it.
That's all still in addition to other factors externally that increase the price of crude.
So it doesn't look like subsidy is gone, right?
It's momentarily gone. Could be because if you look at the pricing, you could see when Naira was about 750, for example. At some point, it was gone. But when the exchange rate went again up to 1,000, it was back in.
Yeah, but it creates a lot of uncertainty for economy, for investors.
Yeah.
You know, because you don't know which way to go. If we know that subsidy is gone, so whenever we see that the price of crude is down, we can expect it to reflect, although over time, because we do know that, I mean, crude is purchased in contract months, I think at least 2 months or so, you know. So, but when you do not know when there'll be government intervention or none, then, I mean,
it is a very tough one. The lack of clarity is giving the people headache, is also giving investors headache. So there's a lot of uncertainty around communication, around what is going on. And are we just running a deterministic government where we clearly know what we're doing? Or are we running a stochastic and reactive government where we're just waiting for things to happen and then we react to it? That's one of the biggest problems that we have.
Perhaps the government feels that the society is not mature enough to handle the hard information.
No, I think so. For me, I think that's maybe one of the factors. But I think my biggest worry is just understanding. So, what is the economic model? Is it a realist model? Is it an optimist model? Because if you're operating an optimist model, then you think everything is good. And I say that with reasons. We floated the Naira, and then just for about 2 hours, the exchange rate on the on the official window was worse off than the exchange rate in the black market at that time. And then I saw a release and they were celebrating that has happened. Like, it's too soon, right? It's too soon to call it and try to make sense of what's going on. So essentially, I think the government needs to come to a point where there is clarity in terms of communication, and then we also are rejigging our techniques based on the realities on ground. Yes, austerity measures are very important for the kind of economy that we run to get back, but we need to balance that with the realities of the country and make sure that we are not losing sight of what it really means to survive in these times as a Nigerian.
All right, thank you so much, Dr. Wisdom, and an oil and gas expert, for your time and
Thank
views.
you.
Now, yesterday here at Channels Television, the executives of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, they paid a courtesy visit to the global headquarters right here in Lagos of Channels Media Group. The team was led by the president, Otumba Francis Nishoye. He was received, and the team, they were received by the chairman of Channels Media Group, Dr. John Momo, and other members of the management as well as staff. The essence of the visit is to build closer ties with the media, they say, as they seek to make the country's manufacturing sector more competitive to drive economic growth. After that meeting, I had a one-on-one with the president to talk about their forthcoming AGM, as well as other issues, especially on how to make the manufacturers more competitive.
Our
AGM is a 3-day event. It will start on the 22nd, which is a Tuesday, and end on Thursday. The fourth lecture of Adela Dutola is one that will focus on that theme, the imperatives of deliberately developing the Nigeria manufacturing sector. On Thursday, we have it, and it meant to really feature issues that needed to be done to ensure that we have enabling environment for manufacturing sector in Nigeria. You will agree with me if you have been studying the trend, which I know by the time, that in Nigeria business, most business people, particularly the manufacturers, is actually providing everything for itself. From the road at times, in the environment, to all the other infrastructure, the energy, and so on and so forth. Take, for instance, energy costs almost 35% of the cost in the overhead structure. And if you want to look at other things like the policies, most policies might be favorable today. And while you are trying to work on this policy to really plan for your future goals, before in the midway, this policy will change and you have another policy that will replace that, which might in most cases reverse completely the earlier policy. Now, like I said, we have a lot of talks about this. So this discussion will discuss about it, including the finance, because the one who's going to have the lecture is the president and chairman of African Finance Corporation, who is going to discuss with us from the international perspective. Now, what we have been doing recently, which is different, is that after each discussion and engagement, we try to look at which department, which ministry, who are the stakeholders that will make this happen.
So, you are also talking about producing what we eat, getting Nigeria to produce what Nigerians eat, where, and all of that. It's not a new conversation, but I guess the thing is, how do we get this implemented?
Each time we are engaged, either myself or my DG or any of our members, we have a common point we normally put that. You don't give what you don't have. You need Forex. You don't have the money. How do you get a Forex? So how do you be less dependent on Forex? That should be the issue. And I believe one of the way to go is actually to develop the real sector. Like you said just a while ago, if you don't develop real sector, the best you can have, even in agric, is to eat part of it and export the rest. To turn your agri products to anything, you need an operation. You need to manufacture. You need to change that from raw substance. So Nigeria, the government to look at how do we change our own raw products, rather from the hole to the seashore, right? From taking it, harvesting it, and passing it through a process within the country and making it happen that you can have an export. So government could look at so many ways to do that. It's a light discussion, and we are willing to contribute so much on this. You can look at intentional development of a subsector. Which one could lead to job creation, less import dependent, and add value that the end products will earn more currency. There's so many ways to look at it, and man is ever ready because we are research oriented. We're ever ready to do that. But like I said, we don't want to produce any articles or anything that you just end on the table, or under the table, so to speak. You want something that to be useful and made use of deliberately so that you can achieve the end in view. That's it. So Nigeria just need to change and consume what they produce locally.
So that's it, that AGM. But more than that, beyond the AGM, getting Nigerians to produce what Nigeria consumes is obviously one way out of some of the challenges, economic challenges that we have in the country right now. Well, a bit of the numbers, closing numbers from yesterday, the market was in the green in the red again. Yesterday it was down 0.21%. Aradel, as we've noticed in the last two trading sessions, has lost that shine that it came with. Investors are still taking profits on that. Mostly, I believe, is investors who had shares from the NESD market because they moved them there and gave them some percentage, and so they're just trying to make profits. Perhaps later we'll see the price stable. I think it lost about 70 naira yesterday. Activity chart yesterday was in the red, deeply in the red, all in the red. Banking in the red, and industrial goods was a bit up. And insurance also. We've removed our eyes from this for a bit, but we see it coming back. Oil and gas, not because of Aradel, but because of, I think, Owando and Saplat. They moved the counter yesterday at 0.9%, a good number right there. But we'll have intraday numbers for you at 1 p.m. Do join me, Business Incorporated. Let's do 55 minutes of business at 1 p.m. But for now, let's head back. There's a conversation waiting for you in the Sunrise Daily studio.
All right, welcome back. So let's continue our conversation concerning the EFCC. Mr. Kaza Kariwe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, still here with us. So, and thank you for staying on. Now, we're talking about how and what to do to ensure that that is corrected, because today they're talking about the EFCC. Tomorrow, it could be another agency, and which may be a similar thing. So saying yes and no, well, clearly might not cut it. You need a definitive position so that everybody can know that, well, this is the direction, this is how we should go, as clear as possible. How should that be?
Yes. I think that the way to go about it is, if there is going to be a piece of legislation, let us isolate corruption. Since corruption is such a national malady, and the government of Obasanjo wanted to give it a death blow, money laundering, fraud, and all that. What they needed to have done was to have not just enacted the EFCC Act at the center, at the National Assembly. They needed to have gotten the buy-in of all the governors. And Obasanjo had a spectacular way of getting buy-in of governors. He was a formidable and tough leader. And the states need to come in. We need to always keep at the back of our minds that we are a federal republic as opposed to a unitary state. I know the central government seldom remembers that. Even the state governors don't remember that. Every month, the state governors have to come here for their federation allocation. So that is the first argument against federalism, that the federal government gives our hands out to the federating units. It's not done, but that is our reality. But it's important that the people who run the central government, and thank God that Tinubu is a federalist.
So should we then say to ourselves, we can't eat our cake and have it? If we want
to be unitary,
then
let's be unitary.
Federal,
then let's be federal.
In the real sense of the word, we have to be federal. Right from the resources, across board.
Across board.
You can't come and say, oh, this creation is overstepping the bounds, but the resources that come from a particular state or something goes to the center. While some states are getting.
We need to resolve the federal issue. The question of federalism needs to be resolved in Nigeria. And if we resolve it, there'll be more peace in this country. There will be more peace. But having said that, what needed to have been done was that the state governors, in passing such a legislation, it's important that the states should be part of it and see how it is relevant to their own states. And then when the legislation is passed by the National Assembly, I would suggest that, as happened with the Child's Rights Act, where states had to domesticate it through their houses of assembly. Let the EFCC Act, the ICPC Act, and such things be domesticated. That would be appreciating and accepting the reality of the federalism, the federal structure that we run.
But do you see the argument flying? Because they'll tell you, if you do this, some states will not survive. The taxes that come from those states, or the IGR, the leverages on what comes from the center.
There is no question that the day we decide to run a proper federation, some states will have to merge. There is no question that there are states which have the capacity. Northern states, Many northern states can survive if those solid minerals God has so generously bestowed them with were to be properly exploited by them and not by individuals like we hear. There are many northern states that will survive on solid minerals, but truth be told, 36 states of Nigeria, not all can survive. Merge them, because we should run a fiscal federalism.
Or they will run according to their pockets.
Or run according to your pocket.
Yes.
And that brings me to another thing. How do you run a country and you make minimum wage across board? House rent in Lagos is different from house rent in Zamfara.
Yeah, but I mean, Labour has made that argument over and over again that a country must have a minimum wage applicable to the entire country. There must be a minimum that no one should be able to go below. Any state can decide to set theirs higher, but certainly not lower than the national minimum wage.
With the greatest respect to Labour, they are wrong. They are wrong because the economic situation, the cost of living in Lagos is not the same as the cost of living in Enugu, and so there should be state minimum wage, which Labour can negotiate with across the nation. How can you say 70,000 naira a month? Some states can't afford it, and when the states observe it in breach, what does Labour do? Nothing.
Big question there, but let me go back to the EFCC story, because some people will say that, look, yes, lawyers can argue on the legalese of all of this. It is interesting that the state that has led the charge in going to the Supreme Court on this is Kogi State. And right now we know where Kogi is with, its battles with the EFCC and the whereabouts of its former governor, Yaya Bello. So this is basically where that is starting from. And then you now have a number of other states following the challenge. So would you also say that the timing of this is a little bit inauspicious?
Yes. Yes, I agree entirely. Given the travels of Yahaya Bello of Kogi State, it is completely inauspicious for Kogi State to be leading the charge on this matter of EFCC should not have the power to look into states' accounts. They're not going to get the sympathy of anybody. Certainly not the citizens of this country. I don't know if you allow me read Supreme Court, except from a Supreme Court judgment by the Supreme Court. The particular judge who read it, Bagge, is now a traditional ruler. It's now an emir. But in one of the cases, let me get the name of that case if you don't mind. Shema and Federal Republic of Nigeria. Bagge, Supreme Court speaking through Bagge, said all that matter. Okay, let me just go back a little. It matters not if the monstrous snake of corruption and financial crimes biting Nigeria is killed by a man or woman. All that matters is the death of the deadly snake of corrupt practices and financial hooliganism daily killing Nigeria and Nigerians. I found his language quite expressive for a judge. He was calling corruption a monstrous snake. And it doesn't matter who kills that, it must be killed. So that is why, and I hope I'm not overstepping my bounds of sub judice, because I know Supreme Court is hearing something like that. Now, nobody can sympathize with a situation at this point in Nigeria where we have been rendered comatose by corruption. And then the states are saying you don't have the wherewithal to look into corruption. No matter how right the states are. And I say that there is some element of legalistic correction, correctness rather, legalistic correctness in what they are saying. You're not going to get the buying of the public because the public is all too aware of the corruption, unbridled.
So there'll be big questions around intention.
Yes. So, but if the states say we have already passed our own laws, as happened in Kano State, I think it was. Kano State has their own Economic and Financial Crimes Commission passed by the House of Assembly. Now, if the state say we have our own, we have domesticated it, we are a federal republic, we have our own laws. Why does the federal government come and impose on us? Well, that could be being too clever by half, but then they will have some sympathy. But what they're now saying is that they should not be interrogated at all. In a climate of corruption,
Well, I might have some questions. Please go ahead.
One of the things that bothers me about this is we're always talking about the rule of law. In every one of these situations, we're always talking about the rule of law. And the judiciary itself has one way or the other come on under some kinds of flack now. With these new narratives coming from the new CJN and a number of other, media, judicial practitioners such as yourself, what is missing? What are the gaps that we need to fill so that we can at least get a measurable level of rule of law? I know there is no such thing as perfect, but at least something measurable that we can say the judiciary indeed is the last hope of the common man.
I think it is my respectful view that the gap in the rule of law is the failure of governments, both federal and state, to respect the decisions of the courts. That is the biggest undermining of the rule of law. What does the rule of law mean? It means that the law rules. In Nigeria, we find too many decisions of the courts ignored by government. So what has happened is that the judiciary has been weakened. The rule of law as a concept has been weakened by the government. And that is where we must give kudos to President Jonathan, who obeyed the decisions of the courts. That was something he did faithfully. He strengthened the rule of law. Going back to the beginning of the first of this republic, the first administration in this republic, President Obasanjo, his government was notorious for not obeying the orders of courts. In fact, I remember the bar and the press used to ask whether the Attorney General of the Federation was an appellate court above the Supreme Court, because his office would issue statements like they are looking into the judgment of the Supreme Court and would advise the government about the advisability or otherwise of obeying it. My own words, but something like that. Now, we have a situation where the courts have asked for Ibrahim El-Zakzaky to be released and a couple of others, and they are observed in breach. The government of Buhari, General Buhari, also would not obey the orders of the courts. I think soldiers in power, even when they become civilian leaders, don't have the temperament or the understanding of the importance of the rule of law. So to answer your question more clearly, Kayode, is simply, Ayo rather, is that simply the rule of law suffers a gap because the judiciary as an institution is disrespected. It has been weakened. And like Obama said when he visited Ghana during his time as president, that Africa needs to move from the era of strong men to the era of strong institutions. We have a situation where our institutions are made deliberately weak. And any nation which weakens her judicial institution is asking for anarchy. So that is the major problem why we see a failure of the rule of law in Nigeria.
Perhaps there would also be
obey the orders of court.
There would also be those who will point out to you, sir, that sometimes it is the judiciary that makes itself available for such. For instance, there are those who would say sometimes in some cases it's judgment for sale. That on the one hand, someone will come to the judge, to the court and get this order. On the other hand, another person will go to another court, get a counter order and stuff like that. It is something that the CGN has also spoken to. And so one is just wondering if the judiciary itself has not positioned itself in such a way, because if a judgment is made, the assumption could be made in some quarters that it was bought. And consequently, someone will say, well, I know the process through which you got this judgment. Consequently, I'm not going to obey it. So where do we go from here? Two conflicting judges all on one same issue. How then does the judiciary handle itself, purge itself of that. The judiciary can't recuse itself.
It is my view that allegations of corruption in the judiciary are exaggerated. That is not to say that we don't have corrupt elements, and that is not to say that our sanctioning process is not too slow and too limited. Let me just break that down a little. If you have an allegation of corruption, if you know that a judge is corrupt, place a report. There are too many reports on social media, too many articles, too many accusations, allegations, but nobody is complaining to the police or to the ICPC or to the NJC, National Judicial Council. I know for a fact that this judge or that judge took a bribe. A lot of it is speculative. A lot of it is circumstantial. That is not to say that there are no cases of corruption. Okay, now, on the issue of conflicting judgments of court, and your suggestion, Ayo, that these judgments appear to have been for sale, they appear to have been bought. That's why they are conflicting judgments. You'll be surprised to know the place of science and technology in preventing, stopping conflicting judgments of courts. The judge in Port Harcourt, in Federal High Court, Port Harcourt, who gives a ruling, which 3 days later is contradicted by a judge in Kano. How do you know that the judge in Kano knows about the ruling in Port Harcourt? I suggest to you, to all of us, that many times the judges don't know. Many times the Court of Appeal, Benin Division, does not know the decision of the Court of Appeal in Calabar Division. Do they have a functioning website where all their judgments and rulings are uploaded within 24 hours? Does the Federal High Court have a functioning website? Now, if you go to the website of the Supreme Court of the UK, today is Friday, isn't it? Judgments delivered on Wednesday this week, you will read them. You will read the judgments delivered 2 days ago on the website of the Supreme Court of the UK. You will not read judgments delivered in January this year on the website of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. So, how do I, as a judge, know that a decision has been delivered by my brother judge, which contradicts the position I'm about to take? Now, for us to deal decisively with this situation of conflicting judgments, which many Nigerians attribute erroneously to corruption. And I think I will be a very bold judge indeed to know that my brother justice of coordinate jurisdiction has taken a decision and I go directly opposite his own. It takes some brazenness, maybe, unless I'm fully convinced that he's wrong. But it's not really something a judge will do if he knew about it.
Interesting that you put it that way.
If we were to resolve the technology question, let us have functioning websites. And my law office has a functioning website. Why can't institutions of state have functioning websites?
You know, it's interesting. My apologies, you know, because I really do understand where you're going, because it's an argument that we have also put forward. I mean, for instance, why would a judge need to write longhand if you can get someone to just type these things and then they can just read it? Because we even hear stuff like, okay, this thing is right there now. Okay, we need to doctor it because it's not clean and all of those things. Anyway, that's another issue altogether. And I'm hoping, because just one issue that came from that is, on the one hand, it is this on this same issue in Port Harcourt and in Kano, legal representatives are on the two sides of the divide. All three can't be ignorant, but you know, that's a matter for another day. How about this interesting angle of the attempts that, well, suggestion, which we understand has gone through second reading, that the road safety officers should begin to bear arms. There are those who are wondering where in the universe that is going to be located. And how do you situate that in our ethos today?
Permit me, Ayo, to just backtrack a little. You you raised an interesting point that lawyers are on both sides, and that the lawyers to Party A would know that another court in another state had given a decision in favor or against their party, yet they went to another state and did the case. I think you are right there. That where the judges do not know about conflicting judgments, sometimes lawyers know, and that brings into question the strength of our disciplinary mechanisms. I verily believe that discipline of lawyers in Nigeria is weak. Look at what happened with the Donald Trump series of cases, and so many lawyers have been suspended from practice or outright disbarred. So there's really need to interrogate lawyers in the teams. How come you did this case? You did it in state A. You did it in state A and you did it in state B, and you did not disclose to the court, contrary to the rules of professional conduct. That lawyers have a duty to disclose even the positions of the law which do not favor them. So that is a good point you made there. But I don't think the bench should be blamed for our desire as lawyers to win every case. On the issue of road safety and in the National Assembly, the bill to allow road safety officers to carry arms has passed second reading. I read that in the press. And beyond the question you have asked, Ayo, about why should they be allowed to carry arms, don't we have too many arms-bearing agencies on the streets? Beyond that, is that bill, that act of parliament they want to pass is superfluous and unnecessary, because Section 19 of the Federal Road Safety Cause Act 2007, Section 19 has already given road safety officers the right, the power to carry arms. It is there in black and white. So why is the National Assembly replicating what has already been passed many years ago? So you get the impression that the research arms, the research assistants of the legislators are not doing a good enough job. You know, when we talk about the humongous salaries federal legislators are paid, you know that part of the salary is for the, what do you call them? Researchers. The research assistants is part of it. And God knows if our legislators bother with research assistants, even though they seem to collect the pay. Why I'm saying that is that a simple glance at the act you want to amend, just read the act you want to amend to empower them to carry arms, and it has gone past second reading. Section 19 says they are empowered. So you are wasting your time. It's a superfluous piece of legislation.
Well, it's a superfluous piece of legislation which the road safety itself supports. Because while they acknowledge the fact that, yes, it is right there in their own act, the act setting them up, they say it's been suspended. And what they're asking for right now is the creation of a special squad, not the one that allows everybody within the road safety bear arms.
If you read Section 19, Section 19 does not even allow every road safety officer. Section 19 has a caveat which says that when, in the opinion of the hierarchy of road safety, their officers or certain officers or particular officers are in danger or are likely to be in harm's way, I'm using my own words now, that they should be allowed to bear arms. So you don't need a special squad because the law has already said that if some are likely to be in danger, okay, so your special squad is that obviously they are having experiences on some highways, you try to stop vehicles, they run you over, perhaps you need arms to shoot at the tires and so on. You don't need to make a special law for that. Just activate Section 19. And by the way, you said it has been suspended. Who can suspend a piece of legislation? Who suspended it? It's an act of parliament. Only National Assembly can suspend it, and there is no evidence of such a suspension.
You know, if we've just looked back a little bit with some of this seeking for special squad,
yes,
I know only recent history tells us
Yes.
Mobile police unit, special squad.
Yes.
Special anti-robbery squad, special squad.
Yes.
We know the consequences of some
Yes.
of those things.
The-
So if you
the
want to do the
citizens
same
suffer.
thing again, and then in addition to that, why does it always look as though there isn't so much critical thinking that goes into some of these things?
Yes.
If you're asking to shoot at somebody's tires because it got away, what's happening to all the data agencies that you have? All you need to know is that, look, I know who this person is. You can locate the person. You simply say, look, the lights flagged you. This is the camera. These are basic things, or they appear basic anyway. So, but having to throw guns and hammers at everything, why are we always like
There are too many guns on the streets. At my age, I feel traumatized seeing people holding guns on the road. Sometimes I say a prayer. So I hope those are real people, not people wearing the uniform and they are hoodlums. And a friend of mine who's living in the US, we went to school together in Nigeria, but he's married in the US and has kids there. So he brought his kids home and seeing so many checkpoints with guns, they began to cry. And that they were so traumatized, he doesn't know how he can bring them home again. So we don't know the effect of the militarization of our space. There are too many guns. And like you said, Chamberlain, again, we are not making use of technology. CCTVs pick the camera, pick the number plates of cars. I was in Singapore, was that in 2017 or thereabouts? And the people in Singapore, friends I made there, complained. They were complaining. They said Singapore is a fine city. I said, yes, it's a very fine city. They said, that's not what we mean. There are too many fines here. I said, why? Say, anything you do, you beat the traffic light, the cameras, they pick you. Everything, you drop a piece of litter on the road. As you are walking on the road, the cameras, they pick you and they will search and search and search till they get you. And you pay a humongous fine. We can begin to make use of technology in Nigeria rather than put more and more guns, which, like you rightly opined, will be abused.
In other words, the best of us have got, you have to go out there and participate in the process. If you let politicians keep putting their cronies, this is the kind of things that you get. You know, they want to throw guns at everything these days. Always a pleasure to have you on, Mr. Kazu Akariwe, Senior Advocate of Nigeria. Let's take a look at some messages that's come from you. Olaiton says, thank you so much for the reputation interview this morning. And I think this is a serious issue, and our people, in fact, everyone, including you and I, need to take serious. I'm in Canada, he says, and I know what I face daily. In fact, you can imagine a Nigerian even cheating on his countrymen.
Well, Jesus for the Street says, the change we seek in fixing Nigeria's reputation begins with self. Says, yes, you and I. We must learn to reduce blaming someone or something outside us for every unfavorable reality we have. My life changed today. I read a book titled No Excuse by Brian Tracy. I stopped giving excuses since then, even if and when they are genuine. The only thing in the world you can change is yourself, and that makes all the difference in the world. It grows from there. The changes you seek begins with you. And unfortunately, most Nigerians are lazy, insensitive, and rigid. But with an addendum such as this, I'm beginning to be more hopeful about rebranding the image of Nigeria. This is a laudable initiative, and I'd love to volunteer to be a part of it. Please, how can we join? He wants to know.
We'll tell you.
Is there the reputation management group to respond to? Femi Adirugba says, listening to the DG of the Nigeria Reputation Management Group is heartwarming. This is what the NOA ought to have been doing. From decades ago, I advised the group to focus their drive on attitudinal change. That's where it all starts and ends.
All right, there you go, guys. That wraps it up today. Don't worry, we'll get you some details about how you can join. But I'm sure that if you just go in there and send them a message, they'll respond to you. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. I'm Chamberlain, so goodbye.
Well, just in case you want to hear from the FRSC Corps Marshal, whom we spoke with earlier this week, yes, on this issue of guns, and of course also on accidents around the country, managing safety on our highways. Don't forget to watch Hard Copy tonight at 8:30 p.m. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Yusuf.
All right, Maokwe, you'll pay for that promo. Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your weekend.